Do we really need closure, or is that just something we tell ourselves to stay emotionally connected to a person or a situation? Because in this season of Love Island Beyond the Villa, we see two very different approaches to closure. One where there's a conversation, and another situation in which there's no conversation at all. Hey, I'm Dr. Q Perry, a board certified psychologist, and in this video, I'm going to break down when closure is actually helpful and when it can actually keep you stuck. Before we dive in, let's define what is closure because it's different for everybody. There's a social psychologist by the name of Dr. Ari Kruglansky, and I'm probably butchering their name, but their research says that a need for closure is just a desire to have some answers to something that feels ambiguous or unclear. So, simply put, it's just a desire for you to fill in those gaps, any area that feels uncertain, unclear, or unfinished. But here's the thing that we get mixed up when it comes to closure. Closure is not something that you can get from somebody else. It's something that you have to be emotionally and mentally ready to give yourself. So here's what I mean. In this season so far, we see Brian and Amaya. They have a productive closure conversation. Now, why was it productive? It's productive because Amaya and Brian, they've already moved on, right? They've already moved on, and they both come to the conversation with a mutual understanding, right? So Amaya is able to share her experience of the relationship, why it hurt, her perception of Brian's behavior. He was able to receive and take accountability for his part in her pain. But also, what I really liked about it was that he was able to give her some contextual information about things that influenced his decision. So it doesn't excuse his behavior, but it explains it. So I imagine that that probably made her feel a little clearer about her decision to move on, but probably also clear up some things because usually when there is a breakup, we tend to draw conclusions about some things that probably have nothing to do with us. Okay, so that's Brian and Amaya's productive closure conversation. And then we have Iris, who chose to not have a conversation with Pepe. Now, we don't know what the rest of the season holds, but let me tell you why I think this approach was healthy for her. It sounds like she's already made peace with the outcome. She doesn't have any questions. It sounds like she doesn't think that having a conversation would be helpful. It doesn't sound like she believes that hearing answers or his explanation would do anything for her. So that's a time when a closure conversation may not even be helpful at all. So this brings us back to the question, do we really need closure, or is that just something that we tell ourselves? If that's where you are today, let me give you a framework for how you can make a decision that's best for you. The first thing you have to do is you have to know yourself. Are you a person who cannot move on until you have all the answers? You want to know, you have to ask questions, and you feel like, I just got to get what I have to say out to this person. I just need to speak my piece. If you're that person, to be honest with you, my experience has been having a closure conversation is probably not going to be productive for you. It might actually do the very opposite for you. It might actually make you stuck or keep you stuck. But if you're a person who's pretty flexible, you've already made peace with the situation, you don't really feel like you need to have a closure conversation, then don't. But let me give you some questions if you're still on the fence about whether you should have a closure conversation or if someone else wants you to have a closure conversation. Let me give you some things to think about. And I'm looking down because I'm looking at my notes. So before you reach out to have this conversation or before you agree, you want to ask yourself, will this actually be helpful? And you want to be honest with yourself. Am I truly looking for closure, or am I looking for a way to fix it? Am I looking for a way to explain myself? Am I looking for a way to reconcile the relationship? And if that is your truth, that is your truth. But you want to make sure that you don't call it a closure conversation, because if that's not what it is, then that's not what it is. Okay. You want to also ask yourself, am I okay, or will I be okay if this conversation doesn't give me the outcome that I want. And that's how you really know what's in your heart, because if you truly want closure, no matter what the outcome is, then you should be okay. Not necessarily that you agree with everything that's said, right? But you know that your goal is to move forward. You also want to ask yourself, will having this conversation help me move forward, or will it pull me back into some old emotions? Usually, sometimes we don't have that closure conversation right away, right? It might be some days. Most likely, it's usually some weeks or even months between the breakup and having that closure conversation. And so by then, your emotions have naturally settled. So you want to think about, is this really something that I want to revisit? What is this going to do to me emotionally if I have already started the process of healing? Because sometimes those conversations can actually send you into a place of emotional dysregulation. And here's the truth: closure conversations don't always give you the peace that you think it will. In my experience counseling numerous people through these types of situations, closure conversations actually open up a lot more questions. It actually opens up a lot more emotions. And so I want to challenge you to be very thoughtful about what you think this type of ending, or this bow that you think you're going to tie on this situation, if you think it's actually going to be helpful. And for those of us who relies on our faith, this is where discernment kicks in. James chapter 1 talks to us about seeking wisdom. And in these kinds of situations, we want to seek wisdom and not just emotional relief. When breakups happen, there's usually lots of emotions. It's usually very intense. And so sometimes we're just really seeking that last conversation so that way we can have some sort of emotional relief. I just really want to be able to share how I feel. I really want to be able to ask these questions because we anticipate that I will feel better afterwards. But I want to challenge you, because sometimes what you think you want may not be the thing that you need, or it may not be the thing that God has for you. You may want an apology, but you don't need it. You may want answers, but you don't need those things to move forward. One scripture that I have stood on personally in my personal life, and I also give to a lot of my patients, is Psalm 84:11. And that is that God will not withhold anything good from you. And I take the liberty to also say that God will not withhold anyone good for you. Okay. And so if that is something that you're wrestling with, I really want you to meditate on that scripture, because it can help to ground you, to help you understand that if something ended, whether it's completely ended or if it's ended just for this season, is that God may not want that for you in this season or at all. So, practically speaking, a closure conversation can be helpful when both people have moved on, if both people have a mutual respect for each other and there is mutual accountability there, if there is emotional maturity there. Clearly, an emotional, immature person, or a toxic situation, or if a person who is inconsistent or inconsiderate, a person who lacks empathy or compassion, those are the kinds of situations where a closure conversation would not be helpful. And sometimes you really have to accept that while you may want those things, another person may not have the capacity to give that to you. And those are the kinds of situations that I mentioned where opening up certain conversations with this person can actually send you into emotional dysregulation. So, no matter which option you choose for closure, the goal is not to just feel better in the moment, but for you to move forward. The goal is not for you to try to change somebody else's mind, but for you to make up your mind about what is best for you. So, let me know what you think in the comments about what is the best approach for ending a relationship. Do you think that you should have that final conversation, or do you think no contact is best?